Hey guys, in this week's Casually Criterion episode, we are going to be reviewing Blast of Silence, spine number 428. But before that, we're going to be talking about Scavenger's Reign and the new Acolyte trailer that just dropped. So, join us!
Welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx, the show where we talk about the TV and movies we've been watching, as well as do a deep dive review of a current movie or a classic film from the Criterion Collection as voted on by the listener via X/Twitter. This is one of those Criterion episodes, which we like to call Casually Criterion episodes. Thank you. You just heard him. My name is Justin. With me, as always, is a man who was born with hate in his heart. Mike. How are you?
Yes, hello. If only you could hear what my my inner narrator voice was saying right now.
Yeah, no, I don't want to. I'm glad that we have like the real version of you and not like the narration of the movie you're in, where you're a cold, hard person with no emotions and hate.
Yeah.
That would be a less fun podcast to listen to and to make, I think.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I can't imagine that would make for good podcasting.
Yeah, and for anybody who hasn't seen Blast of Silence, who's like listening for the first part, Mike was not born with hate in his heart. He doesn't generally have hate in his heart. It's a reference to Blast of Silence and a joke.
Yeah, get with it. Watch the movie.
Yeah. Well, anyway, how are you?
I'm good. Just looking forward to recording today. It's been a long time, I feel like, since we recorded last. Almost a whole week.
Yeah. Whole week. It was a lot longer before that, so relatively speaking, we're doing pretty good.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're doing great for us.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess with that, let's go ahead and get into news on the march, shall we?
Absolutely. Thought you'd never ask.
News on the march!
All right, Justin, thanks for joining me here in News on the March.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. So I haven't really been watching a whole lot of new stuff this week. The only thing that I have been watching is with my girlfriend. She has put on the first season of Love is Blind on Netflix, which are you familiar with this show?
I am. My wife watches it. And several of our friends and her friends all kind of watch it religiously. So, I'm very well
she
aware.
heard about it. Yeah, it's very popular in her office, apparently. So she wanted to be in on the conversation. So, I think my future holds 5-6 more seasons of Love is Blind. I'm not sure how many there are at this point, but it looks like a new thing that we do now in this household.
Well,
so
my hat's off to you, because I have not crossed that line. You know, I've drawn a line in the sand on that. That and like keeping up with the Kardashians and that sort of thing.
I would draw a line in the sand on that, I think, as well. But
yeah. But I do hear things like, you know, anecdotes recounted and some of the drama and stuff. I hear it secondhand.
Yeah,
so
you've probably long forgotten all the season 1 drama that I know about right now. But
if I ever remembered it, it's definitely forgotten.
Yeah, well, anyway, I have no further thoughts on Love is Blind. Sure. Just that it's happening.
It's factually being watched.
Yeah, it is being watched. So
cool.
That's all I've been doing. So I'll throw it to you for the interesting stuff. Justin, what have you been watching recently?
What pressure?
I know.
I haven't been watching too much new and noteworthy stuff. My wife and I are rounding out our rewatch of Community in preparation for the One Day to Come movie. So that's happening mainly. The only new and noteworthy thing I've watched is I finally got around to checking out the first couple episodes of Scavenger's Reign, which is an animated sci-fi show that was I believe it was an HBO Max original series.
Okay. Yes, I remember the trailer for this a while back.
I never saw a trailer or anything. I just heard it was animated sci-fi, and I think since it ended, I've seen a few tweets, a few little articles here and there talking about how it's one of the more underrated, underseen shows from last year, and that it was really good. So it always piqued my interest, but I think that it at least had some legs in some people's brains.
Sure,
motivated me to finally get to it, and I have to say, so far, based on the first couple episodes, I think it's really, really interesting, and I'm hooked in. I think it's 10 or 12 episodes long, and I believe it's a one-off miniseries, so it's got one season and it's done.
Really? That's encouraging, because if it's such a small audience, I wouldn't trust a season 2 to get made.
Right, exactly. And I think before I knew that, I was kind of holding on to see if it would have a second season or the legs for a second season, but since it's a one and done, that's also like a good reason to jump into it now.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't want another Raised by Wolves on your hand.
I know that. I'm so disappointed.
Or one of the many other like dozens upon dozens of streaming shows that get canceled before they complete their stories all the time. Westworld was once like a number one show, and it never got to finish 5 seasons even,
Right, and I think there's Altered Carbon on Netflix piqued my interest, and then I realized that got canceled.
Yep. So this day and age, like, unless it's about to end, I don't trust streaming shows to continue. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which is a much like larger philosophical conversation of like, do you wait to see if the show's popular enough to get finished, and therefore not contribute to it being popular enough to get finished?
Right. Or do I want to invest my time and affection into something that no one can latch onto and then is ultimately considered not cost effective to continue?
Yeah, a bit of a chicken and egg. Although I will say, I think with us committing so hard to Raised by Wolves, we might have been making our own bed there, because that was a weird show. Yeah,
I mean, that show was weird in the pilot, and the reason like I continued with it was because it was so weird. I was like, there's no way this is accessible to like regular people. There's just no way.
And you were right.
Yeah, and I think that proved to be true.
Yeah. So to get back to Scavenger's Reign, I think it's equally weird. The upside that this has is like animation, right? Like you can get weird with animation, and people are a lot more accepting of it, right? With like things like Rick and Morty and Adult Swim, which I learned this show is an expansion of a short film that was on Adult Swim.
Okay.
Which I didn't realize, but it's definitely not the Adult Swim of like Aqua Teen Hunger Force and Squidbillies. It's more like when they would dip their toes into like sort of serious stuff.
Okay. I didn't. Yeah.
It's definitely more serious and not very much humor that I've caught so far.
So give me like a comparison.
So the main story is there's a corporate shipping vessel that's had an incident, and several escape pods jettisoned onto the planet below, and the people who survived the escape pod crash landing stuff, they are basically trying to survive and eventually hope to be rescued, eventually maybe figure out a way off of this island, the planet, and you have several different stories because people have landed all over the planet, and so they're not necessarily all together. So you've got several isolated things, and the planet is very weird and odd in terms of creature design. Like it almost gives me vibes of some of the sort of Spirited Away Studio Ghibli type creature design, but a little bit more twisted, a little more grotesque and violent, and in a way that reminds me of some of like the mid 90s, early 2000s, like MTV animated content, like heavy metal sort of. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know heavy metal.
Yeah, so it's like a bit of a mashup of that, and it's just sort of, it's weird. There's not any big cast in it. The biggest one is Aaliyah Shawkat, who's maybe from Arrested Development is her most well-known thing. She voices a robot. Otherwise, I don't think you would recognize anyone's voices. But it's very slow, very inventive with like the planet and creature design, like the flora and fauna, is all really interesting. And if nothing else, I think it's going to be a cool show just for seeing what they do with this world.
Okay.
And it's a little difficult to explain, like, just how bizarre and weird it is, but I think it's worth checking out. I think it's
you've already
you
sold
will
me.
like it.
Yeah, I think you've sold me. I don't know if you've sold whoever's listening to this, but you've got me. I'm certainly going to watch it.
Yeah, I think if anyone's coming here for Criterion content in general, they'll probably be interested in what the show's doing so far, because it's very slow and deliberate, and definitely very surreal and out there with the thing that's doing. It's definitely not a straightforward sci-fi thing. If someone's here for like cool noir content, maybe that's not for them.
Yeah,
but
it's cool. Who knows? You're an adventurous viewer, in theory. Whoever's listening to this.
Yeah, and I'm only 2 episodes in so far, and but just say that I love the vibe. I love the animation. It's very, very cool, and
right, so it's off to a good start.
Yeah, I'm in. I think no matter what, I'll get through all 12 episodes, because they're only about half an hour each, so it's not a long commitment. And
yeah, that was my next question.
Yeah, even if it falters here and there, I can't imagine giving up and not at least seeing it out through the end and seeing where we end up.
Okay.
So
cool.
that's my recommendation, Scavenger's Reign.
All right, and it's all out, the whole thing.
Yeah, I think it came out, I'm going to say almost a year ago, if not a year ago. It's been out a long time. It's just taken me a long time.
Okay, I really did see that trailer a long time ago then.
Yeah. So it's all there. But any questions, anything else before we move on?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
but,
cool.
All right, you sold me, so yeah. No further questions.
Good. We'll talk about it when we've both seen it all.
Yeah.
We'll retouch in on another news.
We'll do a follow-up.
But in the meantime, I'll kick it off to you, since I did a lot of talking. One of the things that dropped today, as we're recording this, was the trailer for the new Star Wars series coming out June 4th, The Acolyte.
That's right. Yeah.
So do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So this is the new series from, I believe, writer, showrunner Leslie Headland, who did Russian Doll on Netflix. Did you ever watch that show?
Oh, I never did. I heard you liked it, though, right?
Yeah, I watched the first season. I did not watch the second season. I can't vouch for that one, but the first season was like a good, perfect standalone thing that I think is really fun, like a Groundhog's Day, Edge of Tomorrow type situation, Palm Springs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's, I would say, hang on, there's a dog barking in the background. I apologize if you can hear that, everyone.
It's okay. People love dogs, and I don't ever feel the need to apologize. Sometimes my dogs bark, and I think it's fine.
That's true. I've heard them before. Anyways, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah, Leslie Headland. So, a good get for Star Wars. Apparently, she approached this to Lucasfilm and said, I have an idea for something that I want to see in Star Wars. And she says it's something that hasn't been done in Star Wars yet. I don't know. We haven't seen it. But the trailer just dropped, and this looks really cool, in my opinion. I think they use, from the looks of it, a mix between the volume and real locations. And
actually, I saw a report that there was no volume shooting on this show.
Really? So did they? Because there's pictures of the same, little training area where the Jedi train the little younglings.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how that was done, if not the same way that they did it in previous shows.
Yeah,
interesting.
I don't know. That's just a report I saw. I mean, I guess I didn't see. That's not necessarily
I'm
an
sure
official
that's right
thing.
then.
Yeah.
That's interesting though. I was wrong. So it looks like just a lot of green screen and then natural locations.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you could tell. Right. I like Mandalorian more than most people, I think. But from time to time, you can really tell that they are limited to that stage and that volume. I think they use it well, but there's something to be said for like wind and natural sunlight and cloudy days and you know what I mean? Sunlight lighting people's faces. And being with real grass and real water and sand, I don't know. It seems like it has quite the budget.
Yeah, it looks really good and full.
Yeah. So ultimately, I think this looks really cool. Lots of cool action. Carrie-Anne Moss is here. That's exciting. I love her. She never had the career that I think she deserved.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not seeing anything here I don't like. For the big Star Wars nerds, you can even spot some Jedi you might recognize, which is fun. So Justin, your thoughts?
Sure. Yeah. This is set. I think it's 100 years before Phantom Menace, roughly.
Okay.
That's what I've read, anyways. And it's very much kind of around the High Republic, which is I think the most recent Star Wars books I've been reading have been the High Republic ones. So I've kind of dabbled in this.
But even those books that you're reading are like over 100 years apart from this.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit removed, but in general, this past Star Wars world that's set, however long before the prequel trilogies and Phantom Menace, like, has really intrigued me, and I've been enjoying digging into that time. So
yeah,
I think
so
it probably
unrestricted.
So it goes without saying, I think that I was very excited for the show. It's been known for a bit that it has Carrie-Anne Moss in it, so I was excited to see her back. So it was really cool seeing her do some fighting and stuff in the trailer. But yeah, I mean, this looks good. The tone seems great. It feels a lot darker, which has generally been my impression of anything pre-prequel trilogy that I've read or consumed. Is always felt very dark, and this matches that. And it feels like it could line up a bit more with like the tone and like I don't necessarily agree with this phrase, but like this like adult Star Wars of Andor, except this has Jedi and lightsabers, and Andor did not. But it feels like it could be in that vein.
Sure, yeah. It feels like it could scratch the itch that a lot of people have been wanting and complaining about for a few years, or it could not. Who knows? It could go either way, but I don't know. I have confidence that this one will be pretty good. It's been, let's see, like 3 years since the show was announced, so they have taken their time getting here. Mm-hmm. They haven't rushed it, so I'm hoping it's had enough time to cook, and it's not one of those let's get something out the door and on to Disney Plus kind of situations. You know what I mean?
I do.
Just this last week, I actually was reading an article with the Disney Plus head of streaming, and he was talking about how under Bob Chapek, the previous Disney CEO, they had a mandate which was basically put out as much content as possible. We need to build up Disney Plus. And so these big companies like Pixar and Star Wars and Marvel, Lucasfilm, Star Wars isn't a company, but they basically had to just push out content for a minute there. And what we've been seeing over the past 2 or 3 years with all these shows, especially I think from Marvel, that are just not up to par with the terms of quality that I think people were expecting or had come to expect. And I think that is part of this, right? And I think now under Bob Iger, they're starting to kind of right that ship and slow down the amount of content instead of just like overwhelming people with content and diluting the product and the brand. So that's the mandate now. Mm-hmm. But we're still seeing stuff from the Bob Chapek era. So my fear is that in the surge to produce content and get shows made, that this show might feel rushed like some of the other Disney Plus stuff that has come out over the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that since it's been so long since it was announced, that they're putting out something that feels good and finished and done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, maybe they were able to pivot and spend more time in post-production and, do any potential reshoots to paper over anything that might have happened from
Sure.
rushing
No, I
it.
mean, that's not to say that, that I suspect that the show won't be good. I'm just saying, like, everything, the longer you give it to, like, in post-production, the better it's going to be, right? And I know that, like,
Sure.
Rise of Skywalker famously had to come out and was not able to push its release date and didn't get the time in the editing chamber that the filmmakers would have preferred, right? So,
Yeah.
So, that's the big question mark over any Disney project, right? Is it a release date situation or is it done? And the trailer looks pretty slick. It looks pretty polished and good. So
It does. I think my faith in whether or not it's done, just it's enforced by the fact that they just now announced the release date.
Yeah.
They weren't making it to a certain release date.
right.
Because we got the release date yesterday. So if it
Right,
wasn't
but we
ready
don't-
to go,
We don't always need to know those release dates as long as Disney has them. You know what I mean?
that's true.
like-
Yeah, they could have had an arbitrary release date that they were
But
building to, and we
That
didn't
said,
know it. But
there is a confidence to the marketing and execution in this that I feel like kind of screams that we're probably in good hands,
yeah, and I think without making that date public, they're also allowing themselves to change it if need be. And
Yep.
my
Swap it
faith
around.
is that my faith is that they didn't need to because it's where they want it and where it needs to be. So June 4th it is.
Right. Yeah. So that's certainly the impression I get. It looks great. Looks awesome. Lots of aliens. That's fun.
Yeah. Lots of creatures. The one that opens the trailer, I think is pretty cute. And
Yeah. And that weird Star Wars way where everything's
Yeah.
kind of ugly.
yeah. I'm excited to see if that is just an extra, like Jedi in training, or if that particular Jedi will do anything, because I would like to see it in action.
I agree. I would like
we'll
to see it fight with a lightsaber. But
Yeah.
anything else you want to say about the Acolyte trailer?
Nope, I don't think so. Just if we haven't sufficiently sold being really, really excited about it, just know that we are, or I am, at least.
Yeah. Me too. I will be there. So, okay. I guess with that, let's get into our review of Blast of Silence, spy number 428.
Okay, let's go.
You get spotted before the hit. The contract's off. You understand me?
Yeah, I understand you.
You're going to be party to an attempt to kill a man. This is the asphalt jungle. This is New York City, with its fancy women and fancy hoodlums. With its very special beat. Its very special places. Its hunters and hunted. And you will walk side by side with Frankie Bono as he stalks his prey, knowing what is in his mind, feeling what is in his heart. And your hands will sweat with his fear. Your pulse will pound with his desire.
Frankie, no! No, Frankie!
All right, so as always with our older films, with our Criterion films, we will not be doing our usual spoiler-free section that we do up front for our newer films. We're going to go into talking about the movie. We may start spoiling it from the word go, so consider this your spoiler alert, your warning. If you have not seen Blast of Silence, pause the podcast now, go watch the movie, come back, and finish listening.
That's right. So, Blast of Silence was directed by Alan Barron. It stars Alan Barron, Molly McCarthy, and Larry Tucker. The IMDb synopsis says, a hired killer from Cleveland has a job to do on a second-string mob boss in New York. But a special girl from his past and a gun dealer with pet rats get in his way.
All true.
Yeah, that is accurate
And detailed.
to what happens in this movie.
Yeah. Well, cool. So I think this was your choice, right?
Yes, I chose this. It ended up tying with Les Samurai. We ended up doing both, but here we go. Yeah, so I guess I'll kick it off. I guess that's where
please.
you're going with that.
That's where I was. You read my mind.
All right, so Blast of Silence is a pretty cool little movie, I think. This is my second time watching it, and I will just come out and say it. I enjoyed it so much more this time than I did the first time, which is not to say I didn't like it when I first watched it, but I haven't really thought about it very much since then. And I don't think I will have that problem after watching it this time.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because you don't really see a lot of straightforward noir films from the 60s.
Right.
At least not many that come to my mind.
No, and when you do, it can be like French New Wave, like emulating noir for fun, or these sort of like modern noir things that show up in like the 70s. But anyways.
Right. And I guess one could argue that this is like a neo-noir or something like that, but it feels pretty straightforward in its execution.
Yeah.
I think. Anyways, I think this film actually uses like the noir style voiceover technique in a very cool way, as we sort of alluded to at the beginning of the episode. I can see it being sort of off-putting to some people, but I found it to be like really fascinating. It's like third person or second person. Like it's not, you know what I mean? Like the narrator, the way when he speaks.
Sure. I think it's complex. It is first person, literally,
right?
But I'm not convinced I'm not convinced that first person is the person we're watching the whole movie.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Like, is it a god watching him? I don't know. What is it? I don't know. Is it his subconscious? Anyways, that's pretty cool because I can't think of many noir voiceovers, like the detective gritty voiceovers, that really work in that way.
Mm-hmm.
At least not that come to mind right away anyway. But I found it to be pretty effective for the most part. I think it's pretty well shot on what you can tell is probably a very tight budget. So I'll keep it there. We can obviously get into some of this stuff more. But Justin, what did you think of Blast of Silence?
Yeah, I'm not that far from you, but this is also my second time to see it. I believe our first time to see it was the same time together watching it in film class, right?
In the same room, yeah.
Yep. Same room with like 20 other people.
Yep. Not the best environment to give a noir your full attention because those people were students in a college who were bored.
Yeah. I'd be willing to bet that other than the professor who wanted us to see this movie, you and I might have been the people to have enjoyed it the most because there's a lot of complaining.
No, I believe friend of the show who created our intro and outro music, Jake Wagner Russell, liked it according to his Letterboxd rating.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Well, yeah, okay. Jake, I didn't mean to sell him short there.
Yeah.
Or anybody else who enjoyed it. I'm just remembering.
And
I say that mainly to say that upon the second viewing, I am confident that I probably enjoy this movie more than most other people in that class now, because I also enjoyed it a whole lot more this time. I don't know how much you can contribute that to. We had to watch it in a classroom setting, so that can, when you're being forced to watch something, sometimes it feels a little. You're less open to it, because you're ready to get out of class and go have lunch or whatever. Right.
I was about to say, usually whenever I'm in class, I'm thinking about what I'm going to eat after class. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's not great sometimes. Yeah. But, I think it was also one of the one times that our film school actually felt like what I thought film school would be, what I dreamed about it when I signed up for it, was that we'd be watching movies and dissecting them. And this was one of the rare times we actually did that.
Yeah, it was great.
It was a bit exciting, too.
Big day.
Yeah.
Big academic day.
But anyways, I think the thing that I didn't pick up on, and the thing that I picked up on this time is what you were talking about with the narration, because it is low budget. It doesn't look great. when they have time to be either on set or on a location that's controlled, it looks better, but they're not, they're not doing anything crazy. They don't have the budget to get really wild with that sort of noir lighting that we might think of, where the lighting plays a lot and becomes almost like a character in the film. This isn't really doing that, and I feel like it's because they don't have the budget. But yeah, what stuck out to me was what we were talking about with the narration. I can't think of a noir from like this period in film history, or the actual like noir period, where like the narration is contradicting the character so much.
Yeah.
And they're so at odds with each other, and that's where the film got really interesting, is like when that narration would pop up, because you could feel the narration like almost trying to convince the main character of how cool he was.
Yep. Or
and
or
how
like,
hard he needed to be to do this job, and how important he was.
Or how much he liked to be alone. Because it's like he starts to soften, right? And then he puts himself out there, and it doesn't go the way he wants it to. And he kind of gets shut down a little bit. And then the narration kicks back in, and he's like, "You're alone again, just the way you like it."
Yeah.
Or whatever. And you're like, does he? I mean, it seems like he's really reaching out,
Sure. And during his softening times, like, we lose the narration for a bit. Like, it's really consistent up until he runs into his friend when he's having dinner alone and then sees the girl. Like, we kind of lose the narration for long stretches there. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's back, like, trying to pull him back into, like, no, harden yourself. Like, you are awesome, and you do have no feelings, and you do have hate in your heart.
You were meant to be alone, kind of thing.
Yeah, I've never, I don't want to say never, but like I can't recall a narration like that in a sort of detective noir story. It's usually doing, like, saying some of the same things,
right?
But not quite in this way where, like, you kind of know it's full of it.
Right. Well, a lot of times, and this movie is actually no exception to this. I did some boning up on this movie a little bit before recording, but a lot of times it seems like noir narration is added in post-production to make sure people can follow the plot and have something to listen to while people walk around in the dark.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much why it was added to the Blade Runner theatrical cut. Not a classic noir per se, but a noir nonetheless. And I think from what I read, that's why it was added here as well. It was added in post-production to kind of make the movie feel cohesive. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Well, I think they did a really good job of, like, how do we make this
interesting?
Yeah, whatever executive or studio head or producer was like, well, you should add narration so people aren't confused.
Right. And
they took that note and then did something interesting with it rather than just, like, appeasing. And that's cool.
It's possible and probable that they always knew narration was going to go there, which is why there's so little dialogue in the movie. But what that narration was apparently was written in post-production by an actor who was blacklisted, apparently. So he had to, like, do it under a different name. What was his name? Waldo. Bear with me. Waldo Salt. Yep, that's it. Thank you. You got there faster than I did.
Well, he's listed under IMDb as a writer, so I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, and apparently the voiceover was done by Lionel Stander, who was also blacklisted. So he just got paid $500 under the table.
Interesting. I like going with what we're saying, that the narration is clearly, while it feels like inner monologue from our character, the voices don't match at all.
No. So it's a completely different actor, because the main actor is the writer-director. It is Alan Barron. Apparently this movie was written for Peter Falk, but then Peter Falk, like Columbo Peter Falk, the Peter Falk, and then he got offered a paying gig, or a higher paying gig. So
Yeah.
So
Not
we
hard
got
to
the
imagine.
writer-director stepping in. What?
That's not hard to imagine.
No.
This does feel pretty low budget. And not that it's cheap or anything, but, there are times when this movie has, like, all the production value of, like a Ed Wood, like, sci-fi thing.
Yeah, so apparently this was, like, super low budget. Apparently Alan Barron started out with only, like, $2,800 and used it to print a little bit of test footage, stuff of him on, like, payphones and walking through train stations. Anyways, that little bit of film he printed was able to secure him, like, the rest of the budget, which was, like, $18,000, which isn't very much.
Oh, wow.
So then he shot the rest of the movie. And then, from what I understand, that test footage that he shot also ended up in the movie because they were
didn't have
operating
the budget to
the
reshoot.
budget to film other things, right?
Yeah.
So it's like he kind of wrote the film and created the movie around what he knew he could get done for cheap, which is, if anyone's made student films or independent films, you will know what that is like.
Yeah, and even though you can feel it, I think it's done really, really well. Like, trying to, do what you can with what you have. You can tell there's sort of guerrilla shooting a lot of the exterior stuff.
Yeah, not too dissimilar from Les Samurai, which we talked about last week.
Yeah, absolutely, and
another like this era noir that's kind of like this, not quite as a straightforward noir as I think Blast of Silence is, though.
Yeah, and it is a pretty straightforward noir, and I think the one thing that gives this movie a leg up is that main character. And I don't know that, and compared to modern times and all the modern movies we've not seen this thing before, but watching it, with the idea of when this movie was made in time, like, it feels pretty fresh.
Yeah.
I don't know if you got that feeling that, like, it felt wholly unique, even though, like, this sort of, like, tormented character who is not as cold and hard as they want to think they are. That's not necessarily new to us.
Yeah,
now.
well, there's a jolt of like, I don't want to say holiday spirit, because that's not what it is, but it is set around Christmas, and the story is kind of centered around Christmas and New Year. And there's this idea kind of inherent in a new year, which is like new year, new lease on life, right? New beginnings,
resolutions, that sort of thing.
Resolutions, yeah, a time for where real change could be possible. And so there's like this sort of sadness about the whole thing, because you could tell the guy wants to be a different guy. He doesn't like the way he's got this subconscious narrator, or whatever it is, trying to constantly, toughen him up and keep the nose to the grind. But that's not who he wants to be, really. And we could see that very clearly, and we see that struggle throughout the movie. But equally, like, he's also a little bit more of that than he wants to admit, because he's a bit of a brute. He has a chance with a girl that he really likes, and then he does not handle it well, I don't think.
No, he does not.
In my opinion.
Or appropriately.
No. He handles it very badly, and it's interesting to see him try to walk back from it, after realizing he overstepped. And I don't know. It's a lot, and both not a lot at all, of like self-reflection in a character, right? It's like he knows on some level he needs to be different, but it's like this ever-present narrator voiceover. It kind of like pulls him back the other direction every time there's like a little setback,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's kind of sad to watch it sort of unfold.
Sure, yeah. It's a bit like these walls that he's put up, and then they come right back up the second anything doesn't seem like him letting them down is going to pay off. And I think or I guess I'm curious what you think the I guess the reason for him kind of going a little too hard after the girl, I'll say, is that a product of like the life that he's in and maybe the way that he's used to treating women, or is it a product of a complete lack of experience with women and not necessarily knowing what to do? Like, has he done that before, I guess, is maybe a more straightforward way.
That's a good question. I would say that there's a high likelihood he has. I want to say his inexperience with women, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, like, he hasn't had sex with people before. I think maybe he doesn't have experience courting women or ones that he has affection for. But I think part of it is he doesn't want to be the person he is and living the life he's living, but he has been, and he is that person. So I think, like I said earlier, he's sort of just a brute. You know, I think he has the self-reflection to realize it and change if he can. But in the moment, I think he gave way to his worser nature and then kind of realized what he was doing much too late, you know?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it feels pretty easy for him to take out the guy who's getting him the gun after he tries to shake him down. Like he picks that axe up and
he's a violent dude.
Yeah. That's a pretty brutal way to try and get rid of somebody. As opposed to a gun or something a little bit less messy. Yeah. So the fact that he goes axe, okay, let's get him.
This is my weapon of choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a pretty brutal fight for the 60s.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I actually think that actor, I think it's Larry Tucker is his name.
Yeah, Larry Tucker.
Was quite good.
Yeah.
And quite interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking that whenever their first scene together, I was like, man, this is a face. This is a face that like belongs on a camera because it's interesting. It feels real. It doesn't feel like, especially like in the olden days, I feel like everyone in Hollywood, there's a tendency to be kind of actor-y looking.
Yeah, there's a lack of polish to him.
Yeah, there's a lack of polish. There you go. That feels authentic. It feels good. And, of course, you recognize him from Shock Corridor.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I didn't realize that I recognized him from anywhere, to be honest, but...
Yeah, I didn't either until I was looking him up and reading about him. But, yeah, he is in Shock Corridor, which we have reviewed on this show, but it was years ago.
Yeah. I think we all liked it pretty well.
Yeah. I'm a big Sam Fuller fan.
Yeah, this does feel a bit Sam Fuller adjacent.
It kind of does. It has a sort of self-reflection that I think Sam Fuller's movies have. A lot of times they have characters or moral societal lessons that are kind of topical and progressive a bit for his time. So.
Yeah, kind of wrapped up in a straightforward idea of like plot wise, you know. And I don't know that this one has any moral tales or anything to take away, but it's an interesting character study. At least that's how I.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting character study, and also maybe if you want to look at it as a holiday movie, you could look at it as a sort of like, what if Scrooge knew he needed to learn a lesson, but then didn't, and then died in the end instead?
Sure.
You know, I don't know. Like, it's like the guy's primed and ready for like a lesson to be learned or something to change. And it just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Okay. It's an interesting way to look at it, like incorporating the typical Christmas holiday movie message, you know, It's a Wonderful Life, but no lesson learned, and he gets murdered and shot in the end.
Yeah, it's pretty bleak in that sense, I think, in a way that I appreciate, that that almost feels, yes, it feels like a noir, but it almost kind of feels like the darkness and bleakness that was to come later in the 60s, into the 70s, the way kind of movies and endings of movies started to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in some ways it feels like a movie ending I've seen before. And I think that does lessen the impact of the ending for me now, because it feels in some ways pretty typical and expected.
Sure.
But I've tried to put myself in the time, right? In 61, seeing this movie, I think I'd be pretty surprised, pretty shocked.
Yeah, I would say it wasn't your typical Hollywood fare coming out in the 60s, especially at that time. Like Bonnie and Clyde wouldn't hit until like 7 years later.
Right. I think Breathless was 1960, and that has a similar ending.
True, but it has a similar ending, but I would say this movie feels a little more... I mean, I kind of hate this term generally, but it feels a little more gritty and straightforward and violent and a little darker. Breathless has violence, but I feel like Breathless also is very like, let's execute this in a way that's not traditional to remind you that you're watching a crime movie.
Right. Yeah, there's a layer between you and actual
in any sort of
emotion
action that might be happening. Yeah.
Yeah. I love Breathless. I'm not that if that sounds like negative towards
No,
it, but like
not at all. Yeah, Breathless rules.
Yeah, there's a layer in which you're removed emotionally from a lot of Godard's French New Wave, anyways.
Yeah,
but that's a conversation for another. We have not done Breathless, right?
Yeah, have we even really done very much French New Wave on this podcast?
Not a ton. I know we've done Weekend.
Oh yeah, we did do Weekend.
And 400 Blows very early on, which you may not.
Yeah, I don't think I was here for that.
You might not have been a host at that point.
No.
So yeah, not a lot. Maybe we'll have to do like a French New Wave topic. So both our choices are French New Wave, so we have to do one at some point, but not today.
Yeah, not this day.
But yeah, I mean, I guess my point was that there were some foreign artsy films playing with form and stuff that would have this type of ending around the same time. But yeah, maybe, as you said, like Hollywood, I don't think we were here yet. This isn't.
Yeah, and this is not Hollywood, so it makes sense that it's one of the films around this time that could do something like this. I mean, it had a budget of like $20,000. So,
yeah, I'd have to do some math, but yeah, roughly.
Yeah. So, anyways, I admire it, and also I agree with you that much like Les Samurai, it's not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's when you set out to do a noir or a neo-noir or a sci-fi noir or some kind of noir adjacent thing, and you have your tough, brooding, usually violent character. I mean, there's only so many ways a crime story can go, you know, without becoming something else entirely. So I think the key, and I think what kind of revitalizes this, because I think by the time 1961 rolls around, traditional noir is pretty much wrapping up. It's if not wrapped up, you know?
Yeah.
So I think the shot in the arm that this movie gets from is something as simple as the narration. I think does wonders for it. First of all, the runtime's great. The pacing's very generous. It's like an hour and 20 minutes.
77 minutes, I believe. Hour 17.
And it doesn't feel short. It feels full, you know? They make the most of the time. It just feels like it has this indie film energy behind it that every now and then a film just seems so like alive in a way that a lot of films don't. And I think this film has that kind of energy and spirit.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you can see the limitations of that budget on maybe some of the vision that this film might otherwise have. But yeah. I do want to call out that scene. I believe it's after he goes back to the girl's house and finds her husband there, or boyfriend, or whatever he is. But is that shot of him walking down the street that's just one long wide shot, and he walks from like way far away all the way up to the camera, like literally he comes and right up to the lens. They lose his
focus on his jacket or his coat.
Yeah. That doesn't necessarily feel like high quality because they're clearly just like guerrilla shooting that on the street, but it feels a bit more unique, a bit more of a vision than maybe some of the rest of the film does.
It feels like a bold stylistic choice married and coupled with being practical and cheap.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like indie and cool and alive in that way that, like, you know, every few years, like a Robert Rodriguez making El Mariachi comes about, and you could just tell that someone really wanted to make a movie. You know what I mean? And they loved the craft, and they just wanted to film a story, and they had cool ideas, and it was planned. I don't know how much of this was storyboarded or whatever, but it feels like, you know, Alan Barron wanted to make an impression with his first movie. Like he was taking it seriously and was enjoying what he was doing.
Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to call that out. And then I think the other thing I wanted to call out was the peanut race scene. Just I found that really interesting because I truly expected him to not do that and to be like, no, I will not do this. I will not take part in this.
He opened up so quickly.
Yeah. And I think that may be like the scene where I really hooked into this movie and his character and really started thinking about the movie in that way a lot more and really paying attention. So
yeah, it feels like good. In that scene, if he would have known we were watching him, he'd have gotten embarrassed and clammed up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like if that narrator had spoken up at some point.
Yep.
Of like, you hate peanuts.
Like, what are you doing?
Push one across. Yeah. You're going to put your nose on the floor to beat this chump.
You look like a fool. Yeah.
Yeah. That he might not have done it, but yeah, he didn't have the narrator. Like, feel like I think the whole stretch of like that party scene.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
So yeah, very, very interesting scene. I think really pivotal. Maybe not as pivotal as like the one where he's dancing with the girl and then tries to like have his way with her, but
pivotal nonetheless.
Pretty pivotal. Yeah. But I guess you can't really have only one pivotal scene in a movie. So
that's true. Movies contain multiple scenes.
You heard it here, people. But okay.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else? Oh, I don't have anything else. I think I'm good.
Yeah, same. I think we did it.
Okay, cool. So from there, we move into our Criterion poll section where we're going to pick a theme and we're going to each pick a movie based on that theme. And then we're going to throw that poll up on our Twitter account for you to vote in to choose our next Criterion film. Mike, do you want to tell the people what the poll theme is this week?
Yeah, absolutely. So we didn't, I don't know why we're doing this theme, but so we didn't have to think of another theme. We have our tried and true fallback theme, which is blind spots, where each of us chooses a film from the Criterion collection that we have not seen.
Yeah, we individually. So like you might pick a movie that I've seen, but you haven't seen it.
That's correct. And we want to use this show to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So with that, Justin, I'm throwing it to you first. What is your blind spot that you want the people to vote on?
Man, I have three shortlisted, like three that I really wanted to watch for a long time. So, do you want to watch a movie from the 60s, 70s, or 80s?
What an embarrassment of riches.
I can't choose, so I'm asking for your help.
Let's do 70s. We've done
Perfect.
60s lately.
Yeah, we just did a 60s. That's a good point. Okay, so the film I'm going with is one I've wanted to see for a long time, and I've heard nothing but glowing things about it from host of the Cinemus podcast, which we've all guested on and are good friends with. That
Hi, Mike.
over there. Hi, Mike. But he has glowed about this movie, and it's made me really want to finally get around to watching it. But this is All That Jazz.
Oh,
From
dang.
a Bob
yes.
Fosse film starring
Okay.
Roy Scheider. Have you seen that? Because I never have.
No. Big blind spot for me.
Yeah, huge in my opinion. And it's every time I think about it, I'm like, why haven't I watched that yet? Because it checks all the boxes in a movie I think I'd really love, or at least be super interested in, and am super interested in. So I don't know why I haven't watched it, but I haven't, and that is my choice for my blind spot. All That Jazz, 1979, by the way, so almost 80s.
All right, rock on. Perfect.
Yep. So on to you. What is your choice?
Okay, so my choice is going to be a film from 1941.
Oh my.
And that film is High Sierra.
Citizen Kane. Oh, High Sierra. Okay.
I've seen Citizen Kane. You know I've seen Citizen Kane.
I know you have. I just wanted
This was
to
directed
try
by
to embarrass-
Raoul Walsh.
Oh,
It stars Humphrey Bogart.
okay.
Yeah. And
That's all I know about the movie as well, that it stars Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah. And that's it. That's what I know about it as well. So it's a blind spot. Couldn't tell you much about it, but yeah, vote for me.
Vote for High Sierra. Okay, cool. Well, as we said, go to our Twitter account at Casual Cinecast to check out that poll, to vote in it. That poll will go live the same day that we publish this episode. The link will also be in the show notes, so you can click on it there if you're one to do that.
Yeah. All right, cool.
But I think that is it. Show done now, right?
Yeah, I think that does it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, listener, for listening. As always, thanks to the aforementioned Jake Wagner Russell, noted lover of Blast of Silence.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his
Thank
music,
you,
if you want to hear more of his music, go to soundcloud.com/bobscotch.
All right, stay tuned to this channel, like, subscribe. Not quite sure what our next episode's going to be just yet, but our episode after that one will be whatever you guys vote on in that poll. So,
Yeah. So go vote, and
Hooray!
until then, we will talk to you next time.
bye.
Bye bye.